Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson. We are honoured to acknowledge His Excellency General the Honourable David Hurley, Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia, and Her Excellency Mrs Linda Hurley, who are in attendance this evening to mark their final official duty in office. Your Excellencies, thank you for the support and encouragement and recognition you have provided to the people of Australia during the past 5 years. Your Excellency, the Memorial Council, staff and volunteers would also like to take this opportunity to express gratitude to you for your unwavering support of the Memorial during your time as Governor-General, and to wish you and Mrs Hurley all the very best for the future. We warmly welcome the family of Captain John James Marshall, whose story will be told shortly by Her Excellency Mrs Linda Hurley, a member of Captain Marshall's family. This evening, we wish to acknowledge Mr Paul Singer, Official Secretary to the Governor-General, and members of the Government House Executive Team who are also in attendance. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection. His Excellency General the Honourable David Hurley, Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia, and Her Excellency Mrs. Linda Hurley. Wreaths will now be laid by visitors to the memorial. I now invite their Excellencies to the lectern, where Her Excellency Mrs. Linda Hurley will read the story of her relative, Captain John James Marshall.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Captain John James Marshall. John Marshall was born on the 6th of November 1891 in Bexley, Sydney. He was the 10th child and youngest of William and Jane Marshall. John attended Kogarah High School and later Technical College. He sat the Junior Public Examination and the Public Service Examination, and in September 1908, at age 16, joined the New South Wales Public Service as a junior clerk. John was also keen on military service and worked his way up through the ranks of local militia units. After serving 2 years with St George's English Rifle Regiment, in October 1912, he was appointed Second Lieutenant with the 39th Infantry, then was made Adjutant of the 38th Infantry the following year. War broke out in August 1914. On the 30th of January 1915, John Marshall applied for commission with the Australian Imperial Force. Appointed Second Lieutenant with the reinforcements for the 3rd Australian Infantry Battalion, in mid-March he departed Sydney aboard the troop ship Shropshire. Family law has it that the night before he sailed, John's father pleaded with him not to go, but to no avail. At the beginning of July, John joined the Australians holding the Anzac position on Gallipoli. Having been there for several weeks as spring turned to summer, the troops were exhausted and now faced outbreaks of disease spread by swarms of flies. Following a close shave, when a bomb exploded right outside his dugout, by the end of July, John had fallen ill and was evacuated to hospital. 5 weeks later, he had recovered and finally joined the 3rd Battalion in mid-September. By this time, the battalion was on the island of Lemnos. Now barely 200 strong, they had been withdrawn to recover and take in new recruits after heavy losses fighting at Lone Pine. Returning to Gallipoli at the end of October, the battalion remained there until the entire force was withdrawn on the nights of the 19th and 20th of December. In Egypt, the Australian force was reorganised and expanded. Original battalions gave up roughly half their number to create new units. This was how John Marshall, now promoted to lieutenant, joined the newly raised 55th Battalion on February 17, 1916. After a period of training in the desert and guiding the Suez Canal, the Australians were sent to the Western Front. In July, John was promoted to captain and sailed from Egypt at the end of the month. While the battalion went to the front lines in northern France, John was sent to the 14th Training Battalion in England. There he remained for the next 5 months. It was not until late January 1917 that John was sent over to France, joining the 55th Battalion on the 26th of the month. He found the Australians bogged down in front of the town of Bapaume. During February and March, the Australians fought their way forward up to the German Hindenburg line. John missed the battalion's attack at Douai during April as he was attending 5th Army School, but he rejoined them in early May for the Battle of Billancourt. In September, John led his company in bitter fighting in Ypres salient. The 55th's main battle was at Polygon Wood. They captured their objectives, but John had been wounded badly in the thigh. He was evacuated and admitted to the 1st London General Hospital 3 days later. It took John a while to recover from the wound, and months later he was still only fit for light duties. Also being affected by poison gas, John suffered shortness of breath and a racing heart. Yet by January 1918, he had been cleared fit. He joined his battalion in northern France on the 13th of February. Just a few weeks later, the Germans launched a massive attack on the Western Front, hoping to force a final decision. In places, British and French armies were sent into headlong retreat. The Australians were soon called in to help stem the tide. Writing to his mother at the end of March, John closed his final letter. Goodbye for the present. With love to all, your loving son, John. Just days later, the Australians were rushed down to the Somme, the 55th Battalion arriving in a fleet of double-decker buses. One soldier recalled, "As we marched through the main streets, the inhabitants came out from their houses to greet us. Good luck, and God protect you Australians." We marched across the river and were in Aubigny. Shells were falling into the village pretty consistently. Gas shells lobbed now and again. The fumes lurked in the corners. The German advance was halted. With both sides exhausted, they dug in opposite each other, but not for long. Commencing the evening of the 23rd of April, the enemy began a very heavy artillery bombardment, including gas. They attacked next morning and captured the key town of Villers-Bretonneux, but the Australians retook it that night. The 55th Battalion came forward the night of the 26th to take over the front lines amid heavy shelling. Enemy artillery fire continued the following morning when, around 9 a.m, a shell hit the D Company command dugout. Captain John Marshall, Private Charles Partridge, and Private George Hughes were all killed. The battalion war diary made note of Marshall's keen sense of duty and splendid example and courage, which always inspired those about. His death is deeply felt by all ranks. Lieutenant Arthur Gardner said, "There is no doubt Captain Marshall was a very, very brave man, and my brother officers and men feel his loss." John Marshall is buried in Doha Communal Cemetery Extension in Picardy, France. He was 26 years old. The inscription on his headstone reads, "To live in the hearts of those we love is not to die." His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Captain John James Marshall, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left go old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.